Hello again, everybody. Today we're going to do a seminar or a talk, whatever you want to call it, on cultural destruction and the role of the psychs. And my purpose for doing this actually is to get everybody to buy and read this book. This is called The Freedom Fighter. Ron the Freedom Fighter. It is part of the PR series of books. In this, LRH gives you, if you want to be a freedom fighter, what are we fighting for? What are the goals of being a freedom fighter? And I'm going to take one article out of this, which is called Cultural Destruction, and we're going to go over this. So again, my purpose is you should all get this book, but Patrick Volton and I have done a series of seminars to close to 800 Scientologists. Only about 7% of them have actually read this book. So that's why I'm saying that this book will give you stable data in these troubling times. And so you'll see here what my stable datum is, my stable datum from LRH in regards to what's going on in society. And I think it's very, very important that we all understand and get on the same page. So we'll walk through this. We just want to acknowledge the fact that LRH is the greatest researcher and writer in regards to addressing human conditions, what causes bad conditions, and how to improve conditions. All you have to do is study the basics, and you know that that's true. But I wanted to make sure that this is a stable datum as we walk through this particular presentation, because it's very, very, very true in regards to what we're going to cover. Here's a stable datum. Under the false data of the psychs, who have been on the track a long time and are the sole cause of decline in this universe. So you have, this is a stable datum. So whenever I look at what's going on in society, and just like anybody watching this, I probably get 20 to 30 videos a day, conspiracy theories, this and that. I'm totally fine with that because it's freedom fighters. It's actually people looking for truth. So they're like truth seekers. They're looking for the truth. What I have not seen in any of them is this datum. Under the false data of the psychs, under the false data of the psychs who have been on the track a long time, and are the sole cause of decline in this universe. So behind this whole thing, I'm going to show you what LRH says in regards to how they're actually bringing this off and are the sole cause of decline in this universe. This comes out of a policy letter called Conditions How to Assign. It is more than policy that one gets the condition he fails to correctly and promptly assign and enforce. So if we keep this in mind as we go through this, you'll see that, you know, if you want to be at cause over this, you have to apply and understand this datum from LRH. It's a natural law. Again, this is right out of Ron the Freedom Fighter. Page 33 it starts, and this is what he says. He goes, for any group to engage fully and knowingly upon the destruction of the Constitution and any liberty or freedom it may guarantee is less startling than that they should also be accepted as a dominant force behind many politicians. The Constitution is a document containing the fundamental laws of the United States that was put into effect on 4 March 1789. It establishes the form of national government and defines the rights and liberties of the American people. It treats you as an individual. It's written from the viewpoint an individual has rights, and that's why we're a republic. And so if you go through the basics, you'll see LRH rights all about empowering the individual. So the Constitution empowers the individual. So we have national mental health groups in any, again, this is a key thing here, in any country, are all members of the World Federation of Mental Health. The former president of the World Federation of Mental Health, the communist Brock Chisholm, we're going to remember this name here, Brock Chisholm, and any and all officers of this group and its quote-unquote national mental health members freely confess that they have as a primary target the eradication of their country's constitution. So let's take a little deep dive. When I was going through this again, I said, well, who is really this group here? Right? Where they come from and what's their background and that sort of thing. So who is Brock Chisholm? There he is right there. That's Brock. A Canadian psychiatrist. Oh, interesting. who headed up the formation of the World Health Organization. We've heard a lot about the World Health Organization in today's news. So the World Health Organization in 1946 and served as its director for 5 years. So the World Health Organization is set up by a psych. It's a psych-based group. Then served as the president of the World Federation of Mental Health in 57 through 58, one of the non-governmental organizations, they call them NGOs, non-governmental organizations, in official relations with the World Health Organization. Out of Beverly Eakman's book, Educating the New World Order, she tells of a speech Brock Chisholm published in Psychiatry in 1946. The only lowest common denominator of all civilizations and the only psychological force capable of producing these perversions is morality, the concept of right and wrong. The reinterpretation and eventual eradication of the concept of right and wrong, which has been the basis of child training. These are the belated objectives of practically all effective psychotherapy. So they want to get rid of this concept of right and wrong, and you'll see how this plays out as we go through this. So this is Beverly Eakman, continued a quote from her book. If the race is to be freed from its crippling burden of good and evil, it must be the psychiatrists who take the original responsibility. With the other human sciences, psychiatry must now decide what is to be the immediate future of the human race. No one else can. This is the prime responsibility of psychiatry. So you got this guy, Brock Chisholm, setting this whole organization up, the World Health Organization, and then like a division of that is the World Federation of Mental Health. And their whole thing is to basically, from their viewpoint, knock out this whole concept of right and wrong, of its crippling burden of good and evil. And this is how they approached this whole thing, and it came forward, and they had a game plan of how they were going to do that, which we're going to cover. In John Truman Wolfe's book, The Men Behind Hitler, he states, Brock Chisholm, who had called for the reinterpretation and eventual eradication of the concept of right and wrong, wrote that this concept deprived the human race its natural capacity to enjoy satisfaction of natural urges, quote unquote. We can only assume by this that he means wrong urges, since there are no religious or moral urges against quote unquote right urges. Okay, so what is a non-governmental organization, NGO? You hear this in the news all the time, an NGO. What's an NGO? NGOs were first called such in an Article 71 in the charter of the newly formed United Nations, so this is all part of the United Nations, in 1945. While NGOs have no fixed or formal definition, they are generally defined as nonprofit entities independent of governmental influence, although they may receive government funding. They receive tremendous government funding. It would blow your mind how much money that we as taxpayers give to these NGOs. Generally, the NGO label is given to organizations operating on an international level. What is the World Health Organization, the WHO? And again, you hear about this all the time, in today's news or on social media. The World Health Organization, the WHO, is an agency of the United Nations. It's part of the United Nations, established in 1948 with the stated purpose of improving the health of the world's people and preventing or controlling communicable diseases. COVID-19, right? So this is what their hat was supposed to be. So this is LRH, right? This is continued out of the freedom fighter cultural destruction. To enlarge their sphere, to make it bigger, to make their sphere bigger, the psychiatrist, United Nations World Health Organization, Technical Bulletin, series number 98, plans to knock out all churches in the field of mental health. So that was their game plan. And of course, LRH and our church walked right into this, against this game plan. What is the World Federation of Mental Health? This is right from the World Federation of Mental Health website. The World Federation for Mental Health is the only international multidisciplinary grassroots advocacy, it's a big word there actually, and education organization concerned with all aspects of mental health. The way they operate is to push psychiatric and psych programs. That's what they do all over the planet. The World Federation of Mental Health has been a non-government organization in consultative status with the United Nations, here's this United Nations again, Economic and Social Council since 1963, and are in official, this is an interesting thing, official relations with the World Health Organization. The simplicity of that is, you got the WHO, it's like this, the WHO, and if they had a division, part of their division is the World Federation of Mental Health. And they basically said, you guys are in charge of mental health on planet Earth. That's your job, to push the psychiatric agenda. More on what the World Federation for Mental Health. The World Federation for Mental Health, an organization formed in 48. Again, here's this Canadian psychiatrist, Brock Chisholm. Now remember, LRH names this guy by name in Cultural Destruction, calls him out by name. And British psychiatrist John Rawling Rees to exert control on national mental health associations throughout the world. So it was set up with this idea of pushing the psychiatric agenda. And remember, the psychs are the sole cause of decline in this universe, stable datum. This is LRH. In the US, this is a criminal offense to advocate the throw of the Constitution. But many unprincipled state and federal politicians not only turn a blind eye upon this, but also condone illegal seizure, torture, and murder of citizens by these groups. Hitler once said that his primary weapon was the quote-unquote incredible. No one would believe what was actually being done by the saboteur forces of the Third Reich. The Third Reich was a term adopted by Adolf Hitler during the 1920s to describe the 1,000-year regime he intended to create in Germany by conquering Europe. Reich is a German word meaning a state or empire, because their plans were incredible, right? Now, this is key to this whole thing, right? These psychiatric front groups. What's a front group? A group that serves as a cover or disguise for some other group or activity, especially one that is disreputable or illegal in nature. So these psychiatric front groups, here we got all over the country, you got the World Health Organization, then you got the World Federation of Mental Health, and then they set up these front groups to push the agenda. So these front groups have a very thorough program of Western destruction. So you have a movement within the World Health Organization, the World Federation of Mental Health, to bring about Western destruction. Now, how do they do that? What's their BP? Number one, destruction of the Constitution. You see this on display right now, where in certain states, for example, in New York, the mayor of New York has just said that you can't protest. That's against the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. So you have a dramatization of this. Now realize, take a step back. Anybody pushing this agenda is being nothing more than a spokesperson for the psych agenda. They're being a front group. Very important to understand that. So you have this, you can see this being dramatized quite dramatically in today's world. So eradication of boundaries. So you have these individuals pushing for open boundaries, open borders, and just have people pour in from all over different countries. You don't vet them. It's quite a problem. It creates a huge problem in terms of taxes and taking care of all of those individuals. Now, today, it becomes very, very obvious if somebody came over with some type of virus, it could, and you're not even watching for that or not even vetting for that, it could create lots and lots of problems. So, easy seizure of anyone. Well, here in Florida, we have the Baker Act. CCHR Florida with Diane Stein does a lot of work on this to fight back against this, because they can just snatch kids out of school. And we've had experience with this at Consumer Energy Solutions, where we've had employees have their kids grabbed in school, grabbed and basically put in a psych facility. And of course, CCHR has helped them get them out. You also have here this just happened in Dallas, where a woman said, I got to go back to work. So she goes back, opens her thing, and they arrested her. And the judge gave her a week in jail and $7,000 fine, and she's got to publicly apologize. So that got overturned, fortunately, because why? It's unconstitutional. So, but easy seizure of anyone. Now we have the right to torture or kill. Well, you got this big push now on electroshock. There's a big push to revive or bring back and utilize electric shock. Well, they're torturing people, aren't they? Even killing them. How about this one? How about full-term abortions? How about being able to abort a baby? You know, the mother's 9 months pregnant. They can. This got approved by the state of New York. Full-term abortion. That's the right to kill. It's a psych agenda. That's what you got to understand. This is all a psych agenda. Eradication of churches. Well, what happens in some of these states with this COVID-19? The state of Michigan closed, so you can't go to church, but you can go to the pot shops are all open, the liquor stores are all open, and of course you can buy lotto tickets. Realize that this is a psych agenda. The destruction of sexual morality. Well, you got the whole, LRH's answer to that was the way to happiness, wasn't it? So you have everything from, what's one of the biggest businesses on the internet is porn. So you have this whole thing of destruction of sexual morality. You look at the music that comes out of Hollywood or some of the movies and the stuff that the young people are seeing. It's the whole idea of destruction of sexual morality to make less of the individual. A big one here is deprivation of future leaders by the creation of dope addiction in schools. If you want to know what's behind the legalization of drugs and the medical marijuana movement and all that stuff, it's that. It's a psych agenda. And so this whole thing, we have done a lot of work to push back against that. And there's a lot of work yet to be done to educate parents. We have the whole Drug-Free World program as an education program to educate young people, parents, teachers, like-minded people, like-minded groups, the importance of educating about the devastating effects of drugs, but realize that the psych agenda is the deprivation of future leaders by the creation of dope addiction in schools. I'll tell you a quick story. In Colorado, you can get all kinds of data on this. I have a friend of ours that's actually an English teacher. So in Pueblo, Colorado, so they legalized marijuana. The marijuana isn't the marijuana of the 60s. This is marijuana that's like on steroids, where they increase the THC levels up into the 30 percentile, and if they extract it, they can actually get it into up to 90%, and making zombies of the kids. So that the teen addiction rate is so high, they had to set up 2 high schools, one for the addict and one for the non-addicted kids. And she said, try teaching those kids that are addicted. There's like nobody there. So what does that do? It's deprivation of future leaders by the creation of dope addiction in schools. So they're using our school system. Realize that this goes back to the 40s. So look at the time they've had to groove this whole thing in. And so we're growing as a group right into this. And so our job is to support the 4D campaign, support the IS, support planetary dissemination, the things that help reach out into society to help handle these things. But you have to realize, you got to get over this thing, Republican, Democrat, whatever. No, here's the line in the sand. If they're pushing these 7 points, they're a psych front group. I don't care what party they're with, right? If they're fighting against this, one or more of these points, then we have to evaluate that. You have to evaluate that individual based on that. And it's a good, stable datum. Whenever I look at anything that anybody sends me regarding what's going on, how does it align to these 7 points? That's my stable data. I don't have any other stable data. LRH is giving me this stable data. It makes it very simple to sort through things for me. LRH tells us, and this is from a policy letter called Look, Don't Listen. He says, look, don't listen. The scene is right before one's eyes. So you take those 7 points, the scene is right there. You can see it. It's being dramatized. To adjust a scene, you have to look at it. One knows he is right when he looks and when he finds the right why. So one isn't only looking, he is looking to see the scene and find the why and establish that. What's the why? Well, I gave you the why. It's the psych front group, points 1 through 7. Start looking and stop listening. Another concept that is a great stable datum in regards to evaluating other data and what's going on in society is this. It's pretty simple, right? He says the whole decay of Western government is explained in this seemingly obvious law. When you reward down statistics and penalize up statistics, you get down statistics. So just look at what's happening. So just look at it very simply. Who is pushing people to go back to work and who wants people not to work? He says the whole welfare state can be defined as that state which rewards non-production at the expense of production. Boy, is that going on or what? Let us not then be surprised that we all turn up at last slaves in a starved society. People got to get back to work. Oddly enough, and this is like one of the most key points, oddly enough, one of the best ways to detect an SP, a suppressive person, is that he or she stamps on up statistics and condones or rewards down statistics. It makes an SP very happy for everyone to starve to death, for the good worker to be shattered and the bad worker patted on the back. This is being dramatized in today's society. So you want to look for the SPs, you want to get the right SPs, there it is. He says, oddly enough, one of the best ways to detect an SP is simply who's rewarding down stats and penalizing up stats. You have this as a stable datum. Again, if you're going to get 3 feet behind all of this, you got to have the right stable datums. LRH gives you the right stable datums in order to do that. He says, draw your own conclusions as to whether or not Western governments, now remember, that the psych agenda is to destroy Western government. Remember, that was like early on in that cultural destruction. Or welfare states become at last suppressives, for they use the law used by suppressives. If you reward non-production, you get non-production. Boy, is it on display. That's all I can say. If you actually look, don't listen, look, take these datums, apply them to what you're looking at, how it lines up to it, and you'll be able to evaluate the scene very easily. And as a result of that, you'll be able to make the right decisions going forward, who to support and who not to support. There's one thing that I wanted to add into this. Bruce Wiseman did a brilliant job. He put together a timeline. What exactly did happen in China and what was the World Health Organization's involvement in allowing this to become a global pandemic? John Truman Wolfe wrote it. Here's the website for that. You can download that. It's actually quite extensive, but it gives you the exact timeline of the World Health Organization's involvement in today's global pandemic. And now with this data, you can very readily see that this is a psych program. The psychs are behind this. Now, whether it was done on purpose or accidental and this taken advantage, whatever, we'll have to investigate that and figure that all out. But the fact of the matter is it's happening, and it's happening right in front of our faces. And so this gives you good, stable datums going forward in order to get through this. So without further ado, have a good day. See you next time.